Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, once again to the regional Pro Tour qualifier here from Darksphere in London. My name's John Partridge, Dom Harvey beside me. We've stepped into the booth to give Shay and Roy a little bit of a rest. The only reason we're here is because we're bad at Magic, and you went 0-2 drop, and I went 1-3, and well, they called us into the booth because probably that's sorted there. So what was it you were playing, and what went wrong?
Yeah, so I played Black-Green Delirium, focusing on a bigger list with Liliana, Ishkana, and so on. And the idea there is, I expect there to be a lot of Mardu today, and that seems to be the case. The top table's absolutely flooded with Mardu, and the idea was that Ishkana is one of the best cards in the format against them. Liliana typically been very good as well, and we've seen that deck kind of recede a bit. But I figured that you can kind of win those longer games against Black-Green that way, and I think that was a good choice. It ended up playing against Team Tower, which is a terrible matchup, and then the 4-color Marvel deck, which is maybe even worse. I still think it's a decent call, although I think I underestimated just how good this Planeswalker plan is against these generic mid-range decks.
From Mardu vehicles.
Right, I mean, you can say that Ishkana is a good card against them, and it is, but then when you're going up against 10 Planeswalkers after sideboard, and the Oaths and so on, I don't know if your matchup is actually still good after board, which is a testament to how good that sideboard plan is, and a testament to really how good this Mardu Vehicles deck is.
Yeah, I had a bit of the same problem actually. I decided to sleeve up Sultai Delirium, which is on a similar game plan, slightly bigger, and I sat down and realised that the deck actually doesn't do anything in the mid game, which was probably the biggest profound problem I had. Was I would start fine, have a couple of removal spells, and had this really good late game, but in the middle I would just lose most of my life, and I was on camera in round 1 and got destroyed. I think I like the deck, I like the idea, I just make a number of changes. Like you say, Ishkana, still very strong card. It's just making sure you have enough things to get there. But that's by the by. Now you're going to see people who are actually able to win games of Magic. Round feature match, we've got Joao Choca on 3-1 and Chris Vincent at 3-1, and we seem to have a Mardu Vehicles mirror. They are very different though. One of them is your standard Mardu Vehicles, the other one is Mardu Ballista.
Yeah, so
it's going to be interesting to see the difference.
So Joao's list, Joao is a member of Team Axion, a regular on the European GP circuit, always see him there, always see him doing well, and indeed he made the top 16 of Utrecht last week with this Mardu Vehicles deck that I think almost his entire team is playing, with 1 or 2 exceptions, and they've opted for the more classic list. So going to that event, this Mardu Ballista deck was floating around online, but not really a known quantity, and it really burst onto the scene with that win. And so the question I think for Team Axion was, are they going to reshift their deck towards that list? They've opted to kind of stick with what they had before. So we've got the main feature in the main deck here is 2 copies of Archangel Avacyn with 2 more on the board, so full 4 on the 75. And that, I think, is one of the big mirror breakers that people are going to now. You're very good against both the aggressive plan in Mardu Vehicles and also against the Planeswalker heavy sideboard plan too.
We'll go over Chris's deck in a moment, but the players are almost ready in the feature match here. We're just going to send that down live. Welcome to round 5 from the Regional Pro Tour qualifier here, hosted by Darksphere. Take it away, gentlemen. So, just going back to the other side, where the Mardu Ballista deck, and it's actually interesting. So, like you were saying about the Archangels, there are none of that in here because you're running 4 Walking Ballista, the new XX artifact that comes in with tokens.
Although, interestingly, Avacyn is actually very good with Walking Ballista, so I wouldn't be surprised to see some of the Ballista decks adopt that moving forward as well.
Yeah. The other interesting thing, obviously, you've got 2 copies of PNLR, something that you trade off when you can keep it in, rather than having to change them out for the Walking Ballistas.
And that's one of the design choices in this Vehicles deck of which of these 3 drops do you want to play. So Depala was in some of the early lists. That seems to have dropped off a bit now. We don't see that very often. But there's also, we see 1 copy of Cultivator's Caravan in here. Some lists have the Ethersphere Harvester instead, which is pretty good in the mirror too. So lots of... obviously you're going to play your Fabled Inspectors, your Torquil Exemplars and so on, but then when you move up the curve you actually have more options as to what you want to play.
And the big thing about these decks now, they're full of removal, like having now access to Fatal Push and in a format where 2 drops are king, as you might say, because you have so many powerful ones. Obviously Winding Constrictor is a very good example of something that is very, very powerful if you can get it gone, and a 1-mana removal answer to it is pretty strong as well. So the 4 Fatal Push, 4 Unlicensed Disintegration coming from Chris, whereas Zhao's actually only got 3 Fatal Pushes, a difference.
And another one of these key differences here is Chris has 2 copies of Chandra Talk to Defiance in the main deck, which is starting to become standard for the Vehicles deck. I think the issue is it's very good in the deck and very good against most of the decks in the format, not that great against the mirror. And so if you expect a lot of Mardu, which they did, and I think they were right to expect that, then moving that to the sideboard, as Zhao has done, makes a lot of sense.
So in your eyes then, what makes Chandra not so good in the mirror? I mean, it obviously has a lot of line of text. You have free card draw effectively. Obviously, it's +1 ability. Exile the top card you library. You may cast that card. Obviously, it says cast not place. You can't use lands. You can make more mana. You can kill something. And obviously, the ultimate, if you ever get to cast it, is pretty much game winning as well. Why do you find it worse in the mirror?
So like most Planeswalkers, it's not great against Heart of Kiran. It's also quite difficult to defend it, so Gideon at least puts something onto the board. Chandra can shoot something down, but then it's often quite easy for them to just attack it with whatever else they have on the board. Whereas Gideon, they often have to spend an entire turn or at least one removal spell to get it off the board, so they're not breaking too much on the tempo there. So getting into the actual game, we see a very good start from Joao with Heart of Kiran into Veteran Motorist. And being on the play, I think is very important in this standard format, but especially in the Smarter Vehicles mirror, where we could easily see, like, if Chris was on the play instead, this could be very different.
And I think one of the interesting things is having access to Veteran Motorists just means that Jao's, the Heart of Kiran's are bigger. They're 5/5s, and going it's 4 attacks. It's a lot of damage, and Chris has lined up a Scrappy Scrounger on the other side, and obviously it can attack, but it can't really interact with the Heart of Kiran, and that's a 5/5 that's going to hit him every turn. And Vincent needs to find either one of his Fatal Pushes or one of his Unlicensed Disintegration, because he can't actually block that Heart of Kiran profitably because his are all so small. So we see Ether Hub into play from Chris. And one of obviously the things that is nice, they're using the new land, the Spire of Industry, because there's so many artifacts in the deck. The clues from Thraben Inspector, Scrappy Scrounger, Heart of Kiran, all artifacts, loads of access to that coloured mana, even if it costs you a life to play.
When we think about that choice of Veteran Motorist versus Walking Ballista, Ballista matches up well against the Motorist, so in that head-to-head fight, the Ballista wins. But Motorist makes your best cards better, so as you say, in these Heart of Kiran mirror matches, or if you have Harvester or Cultivator's Caravan, the Motorist helps you a lot there. And also just, it enables your better draws insofar as, like, you can scry for that third land, you can scry for the Disintegration if you're trying to dig for that, so that is one of the big pluses of the Motorist.
And it does turn out, scry 2, quite a good keyword.
Yeah, you can always, you look at Veteran Motorist and you think, why does this need to scry? Like, if it just didn't have that clause, I think it would still be a playable card. But this was clearly very push, and they decided the best way to make this a good card was to add that consistency to it.
And then we see, so we have Chris firing off the first of his Unlicensed Disintegrations. He will get the extra text of dealing 3 damage because he controls an artifact. It was one of those things, it was so telegraphed. Third land in an aggro deck, you didn't do anything.
Yeah, although it is interesting
that
if he was going to disintegrate the Motorist, letting Joao on tap leaves room for, let's say, Fatal Push on the Scrounger to deny the 3 damage. So if he was going to do that, maybe there's an issue of timing there.
And it does interesting to say, as Joao has clearly been on mulligan, he's had 2 cards left in hand. He's placed 4th land, and obviously that would have been a perfect time if, say, Gideon to make his appearance. But Chris plays his 4th land. He's going to see another Scrappy Scrounger, and he's starting to get the dice rolling with the people, and he does have another copy of Unlicensed Disintegration still in hand. So we'll see what Joao. So Joao has his 5th land, another pass of the turn.
I don't know if Chris knows the exact details of Joao's list. Obviously, we do, having the list in front of us. In the dark, would you assume that there's an Avacyn coming here? Like, Joao just passes with nothing, right? So you assume either you're en route to winning the game because his draw is terrible, or there's something that you need to be aware of here.
I think if I was in Chris' position, you're so far ahead. I don't think you can play around Avacyn, but I think if you do, you're just going to lose.
And he has a
Avacyn
disintegration,
anyway.
So there's not even a question of do you need to play around it.
He actually has a 3rd one in hand. He has managed to draw 3 copies of his Unlicensed Integration. We see the Heart of Kiran taking out one of the Scrappy Scroungers, and this deck adds up quickly. Zhao's down to 4 life. I mean, the Unlicensed Disintegration does a lot of damage, as it turns out.
And you see the nice synergy between Avacyn and Heart of Kiran. So with the trick on the stack, you can use Avacyn to crew the heart, and then you have this indestructible blocker that can survive until your next turn.
No, Zhao's drawn Gideon for the turn. However, Chris has another Unlicensed Integration, so we will now be going to.
Well, not necessarily. So if so disintegration can. So I imagine that Zhao's going to make a token. Chris is going to disintegrate it, and then he can use a loyalty counter from the Gideon to crew the heart.
Nice, it puts him to 1 life.
Yeah, so Joao is still in dire straits here, although Chris is only on 10, so if he's able to somehow survive this turn, he could actually turn this around in pretty short order.
So we'll soon find out. So, draw for the turn. Chris, what do you find? You've drawn very well so far. So it looks like a Spire of Industry into the hand for Chris. These pre-board games do not take long.
Very swingy, yeah.
My only concern is, what does the post-board game look like? Well, and apparently they are quite slow. One of the interesting dynamics of a format where your aggro deck suddenly transforms into a probably the best Griffin. A control deck or a mid-range Mardu deck with your Oaths coming in and all your control cards as well.
And that's something that we see a lot more in Magic over the past few years, is you don't have these one-dimensional decks as much. So you think back to the previous format, you had this white-red humans deck where you're just trying to flood the board with 1-drops and get them dead as fast as possible. But you don't really have a backup plan. So if the game goes to turn 6 or turn 7, you're drawing your Expedition Envoys and and so on. Whereas this vehicles deck, like Raven Inspector, is still a fine card to draw on turn 6, right? Your 2-drop Heart of Kirin is one of the cards you most want to draw at really any point in the game. You know, Gideon is this very powerful threat. Scrapheap Scrounger is very resilient. So this is not a one-dimensional aggro deck. You know, this deck can survive and compete very well into the late game.
And interesting enough, speaking of obviously not being dead because of the interactions with loyalty counters and the Heart of Kirin, Chris seems to have lands still in hand. He obviously has another copy of Unlicensed Disintegration, but Joao's at 4, and obviously Chris has got the ability to get one of the Scrapheap Scroungers back, but unless he draws something soon, he's going to start falling quite far behind.
Yeah, that Scrounger can't block, and then if Joao does have a removal spell, he can deny Chris the 3 damage on the Disintegration, which is one of the ways that he could win the game. So if let's say there's Disintegration into a top deck Walking Ballista, might be an example, but it looks like Joao is going to have this, despite a kind of rocky start.
Yeah, obviously Chris has got many outs at this point. Ballista's one that we've already spoken about. He could make it a 1-1, kill something that belongs to Joao, which would give him the results that he needs. Obviously Joao has to play a creature, but Gideon, funnily enough, makes a 2-2 every turn, unless Zhao's going to go aggressive. And I'm not going to lie, Vincent's going down to 1 life this turn. Oh no, he's only going to attack with Gideon this turn. So he's not going to take the opportunity to go down on 2, but I mean, Vincent has to find something this turn. Obviously he can make the Scrapheap Scrounger, which is great.
Yeah, it's worth noting. So Joao potentially had lethal on board if he uses Gideon's Loyalty to animate Heart of Kirin and then animates Needle Spires. That's lethal on board. He may have decided, though, Chris almost certainly has a removal spell in his hand, so you may as well play around that eventuality.
And he can unload his entire hand onto the table. And yes, although Gideon obviously could make the Heart of Kirin, just the fact that Chris must have something. He's got to think Chris has something, even if it's a fatal push. It kills the Heart of Kirin cold dead, and it's one of those ones that you're not quite so. So we'll see if Chris decides to bring back one of his Scrapheap Scroungers in the end steps. Yep, so he's going to bring it back. He's going to exile the other one. A little nice mechanic, obviously. He doesn't have much in the graveyard. It doesn't seem that too many things actually hit the graveyard in this game because you're trying to be so quick, so efficient into your opponents going forward. So, Chris, what is it that you can do? So we're going to untap.
So there's a kind of fun tension here where he wants to remove something. If he removes the Toolcraft Exemplar, then Scrounger can't block, but Scrounger can crew the Heart of Kirin. Whereas if he removes the Scrounger, Toolcraft Exemplar can't crew the Heart, but it can just block itself. So there's no way for him to guarantee 0 blockers here, it looks like. And then also you have Gideon's Loyalty too.
Has he drawn? No, he hasn't. So he hasn't drawn a Walking Ballista. He's drawn a Fatal Push. So he's going to unlicense Disintegration Toolcraft Exemplar. He's got very much. He's at 5 life still.
And there is actually another option here. So if he redirects the damage to the Gideon, then Gideon can't use the damage to crew Heart, but obviously Scrounger can now instead. And yeah, because it's going to take game 1 with some timely removal spells.
Yeah, very nice Fatal Push off the top. So one of the very, as you say, very swingy. It almost looked like Joao would come back, but a couple of well-timed removal spells and Chris is off to the races. So post-board Mardu Mirror.
Okay.
Let's start with Joao and what he's got, and we'll see where they compare up with each other.
So Joao's board, he has 2 Archangel Avacyn, 2 Chandra, 2 Oath of Chandra, 2 Release of Gremlins, and then a bunch of singletons here. So an Anguish Unmaking, a Fatal Push, a Fumigate, a Painful Truths, a Shambling Vent, a Shock, and a Sorin Grim Nemesis.
Okay, so very interesting that he hasn't gone down the full Oath plan.
Right, so no Nahiri, no Obnix List, no Oath of Liliana. So playing Oath of Chandra because he does still have 6 Planeswalkers here, or I guess 7 if you count the Sorin, and it's just a good card in the matchups where you want that. So I think the extra 2 copies of Avacyn are going to be crucial here. I think that's one of his crucial mirror breakers, and that's been working very well for him. And then if it does evolve into a Planeswalker fight, you want to have a Planeswalker that's good against other Planeswalkers, and Sorin Grim Nemesis really fits the bill there. There is a question of, so obviously I think if he's boarding in these 5 drops and 6 drops, he's going to want the Shambling Vent. Does he want Painful Truths, let's say? Because if it does turn into a more attritionary matchup, then that's a good way to get ahead. And then one of the big questions in the mirror nowadays is, do you want Release of Gremlins and how many copies? Because, you know, if your opponent is de-emphasizing their aggressive plan, maybe shaving some Scroungers and so on.
Release of Gremlins is just artifacts. There's no enchantments rule, it's just artifacts.
Right. So Heart of Kirin is one of the best cards at pressuring Planeswalkers. It allows you to essentially have an aggressive component to your deck by itself. So given that Heart is so important, you may want to just board in Release of Gremlins anyway, but then if if your opponent starts to shave their hearts, or if they don't draw their heart, then release can just end up stuck in your hand with no real purpose.
So for those of you who are not aware, always helps if you can spell, but Release the Gremlins is an XX red, destroy X target artifacts, create X 2/2 red gremlin creature tokens. Obviously great, makes blockers on the ground, and let's be honest, Mardu Vehicles doesn't have the largest creatures in the world. They're all quite reasonably sized small creatures, and 2/2s are quite powerful.
And most of the time this is just going to be a Manic Vandal, but sometimes if the game does go long, you can destroy 2 things, make 2 creatures, which is a really nice way to swing the game.
So an interesting leveling comes with it, of how much you keep in. Do you bring them in? What's my opponent going to do? Because it could be a very interesting one.
Joao also has a copy of Anguish on Making, which I think is a really interesting card here. It can... I mean, the appeal of the card is it kills basically anything. So if you want to remove a harder cover that's beating you down, you can do that. But also, if it does turn into this Planeswalker fight, this is one of the only cards in the format, really, other than stuff like Ruinous Path, that can just directly take down a Planeswalker.
Okay, so on the other side, look at Chris's deck. He has 3 copies of Release the Gremlins, obviously the same as standard for a red deck now, with so many artifacts in the format. He has 3 Oath of Chandra, 3 Oath of Liliana, 2 Nahiri the Harbinger, 2 Obelixis Reignited, an Archangel Avacyn of his own, and 1 Authority of the Consoles. Now, that card is not for this matchup. That's for your Saheeli Rai combo. Because they can't combo through it because everything comes into play tapped. Obviously, the stuff we're looking at in here, if you want to go down the full package, you've got so many cards to bring in, and this is what we were saying with the way that the deck's now evolved. The 6 Oaths and the 4 5 extra Planeswalkers. It's basically removed green-black from a lot of this format.
Yeah, so this Oath plan is very good against green-black and very good at transforming your deck completely. I think this is where Joao's configuration with the Avacyn, with the Anguish on Making and so on is going to have the advantage here, because you look at the Oath plan. So Oath of Chandra can be very good, just shooting down something on the other side. And then Oath of Liliana is a little bit uninspiring, so a lot of the time they can just sacrifice Thraben Inspector, Scrapheap Scoundrel, something like that. So you're really relying on the extra value from the Planeswalker triggers to make those cards good. And then...
Obviously Archangel Avacyn.
Yeah.
Good card in it.
And then some of the extra Planeswalkers, like Ob Nixilis, I suppose can be okay if you're ahead, very bad if you're behind, and isn't really going to do a good job of catching you up. And then Nahiri, is kind of in the same boat.
One of the interesting things is, do you feel that the Mardu Ballista deck has in essence made sacrifices to some of its matchups, in that it has sacrificed a proportion of the mirror match to be amazingly good against the mid-rangey green-black decks and the like?
I think so, and I don't know that you actually need to make all of those sacrifices. So you think back to the Pro Tour, we saw like Eduardo Satchelic, for instance, in his Mardu Vehicles deck had Spell Queller, Painful Shoes, Fumigate, all of these various options in his sideboard.
Because they were splashing blue at that point.
Right, and that's actually kind of an understated strength of this Vehicles deck. The mana is excellent. So you think about the Canadress fast lands, if those were pain lands or they were some of the other land cycles that we've seen, I don't know if this deck would be, I think it would still be playable, I don't know if it would be this good, and you wouldn't have as much flexibility. But these lands, so good at just enabling these aggressive starts, fixing your mana in the early game. Where they do become awkward, though, is in these sideboard games, if you board in these 4 drops, these 5 drops, these 6 drops, you're often going to get into these situations where you need to top deck a land, but 10 of the lands in your deck are just not eligible to do that.
Yeah, and it's one of the interesting things of the way the format has changed, in a way, that because of the introduction of Fatal Push. And when it first came out, I know people thought, oh, it only kills 2 mana creatures, and it can kill up to 4, but what does the format look like now? It is just littered with 2 mana cost creatures, from your Constrictors, like we said earlier, to pretty much all of the Vehicles deck, including the Heart of Kiran. Like, it's one of the best removal spells in the format. Bearing in mind you now play it with 4 copies in almost every deck that's black has 4 copies of the card.
Yeah, Fatal Push, excellent both in this deck and against this deck. So moving out of the game, we see a fairly slow draw from both sides here. The first play from Joao looks like a turn 3 Pir Nalar.
It was he played Scrapheap Scoundrel on 2, but it got Fatal Pushed, and then we had a Thraben Inspector, a Pir Nalar, and with the token, which then got unlicensed, disintegrated, and now we have the 1 damage beatdown.
All right, my apologies.
This game might be a little slow.
So it looks like Joao trying to redevelop his board with a veteran motorist. And so the question is, if you're boarding in all of these cards, what do you take out? And so if you're taking a less aggressive slant to your deck, Toolcraft Exemplar is often one of the cards that people look at first, because if the game is going long, you don't want to be drawing down turn 7 or turn 8. And because there is so much removal in both of these decks, it's unlikely that you can just beat them down and win on turn 4 or turn 5.
Whereas the Thraben Inspector, 1 drop, makes a clue. And the clue is really important because it turns on your Spire of Industry, draws you more cards, and just allows you to get very far ahead. So we're going to see a point of life being taken by Vincent. I imagine this is going to be a Gideon ally Zendikar being dropped onto the table. There we see it. And I believe he has got an Oath of Liliana in hand as well. Maybe this is one of the ones that actually shows it's not as good right now.
Yeah, and Gideon, talking to some of the Axiom guys earlier, Gideon is one of the best cards in the mirror, and the games, as so many games in Standard do, comes down to who can resolve and protect Gideon. And what you often see as well is you sometimes have to take some of these awkward lines to hedge against the possibility of a Gideon. So maybe you play a threat which is worse if they don't have Gideon, so that you can untap, use a removal spell, and hit Gideon for just enough damage to finish it off.
And that's where obviously Fatal Push comes in really well. 1 mana, removes the token, allows you to then hit Gideon. And Joao's a little bit behind the 8-ball at this point. He's got a Gideon on the other side of the table, and that's quite difficult to deal with.
Yeah, one of the most important concepts in Magic is using your mana efficiently. Often, regardless of what else is going on, the player who can use all their mana every turn or cast multiple spells in a turn is going to get ahead. And Fatal Push is great for doing that. If they play a Gideon, that puts you on the defensive. But if you can push a token, untap, kill their Gideon, and then play something else, you can really swing the advantage back in your favour.
So this is very interesting play here. So Joao's attacking with everything, trying to get rid of the Gideon. We're going to see Archangel Avacyn appear off the top. So very good draw there for Joao. Gideon drops down to 3, and Chris gets on top sword. It's quite an impressive board on the other side. It was a good attack. Obviously, it was 3 damage because he has the Archangel in hand. And go from there. So a draw, another Gideon comes off the top. We now have the Oath of Liliana as well, but right now on a board of a Thopter token, it's pretty bad. Let's be honest. It's not really something you want. So it'll be interesting to see what he decides to do from here. If he has a removal spell, obviously it looks a lot better, but we'll have to wait and see. Spire of Industry makes this mana base so much better. It's very impressive. And we do have another unlicensed disintegration in hand, which we're going to see fired off, targeting the Abyss. And we're going to go down to 13 for Joao.
Yeah, it's very important for aggressive decks to have good mana, and there have been formats in the past where maybe the dual lands aren't that good, or there's only one cycle of them, so it's hard to support a 2-color deck, where aggro decks just haven't been as good because your mana doesn't work in those early turns. This deck you have 4 Concealed Courtyard, 4 Inspiring Advantage, and Spire of Industry, and potentially Ether Hub if you want to go that far, really making your mana consistent enough.
And it's interesting, this format does have very good mana. You can play, like for example, your 4-color Sahili Roy deck. Like, it's a 4-color deck in a format where there isn't, like, you wouldn't normally think there's no fetch lands, so we've got away from that quite a lot. But it's one of those formats where actually the mana is a lot better than you think if you can make it work. And the use of the Spire of Industry is one of those things.
Yeah, Mess Head 1, it is bad news for me playing in the tournament. It's great news for you because you get to all listen to me and then give me feedback afterwards. But yeah, this day was not going as planned. Very happy to be here in the booth, but would rather be out there in the ring still.
I think we both would. Everyone, I remember people saying, "Oh yeah, you're going to the PTQ," and I was like, "Yes, please don't remind me. I haven't actually prepared for it properly." And it turned out today that made the wrong deck choice, and I think for both of us, probably could have done better. But get to be back where I should be, which is behind the commentary booth where I belong, as I keep getting told by everyone out there going, "Why are you playing? What are you doing here? You're not prepared to commentate?" I'm like, no, I actually qualified for one. I got a bit lucky at a tournament. I recalled people, and well, that was how the game went. And we
choose to take it as a compliment. So
I will.
So we see Joao making his move there. Disintegration takes down Gideon. And it seems like Joao, not quite sure exactly what Chris is in hand.
The Oath of Liliana, not a very good card, but he does have another Gideon, which may cause some problems, but he does have a second
I believe we see Avacyn there as well. So Avacyn is, we spoke about earlier how it's hard for these decks to kind of regain the initiative from each other. Avacyn is a card which is very good on offense. Often they have to make these awkward blocks and you can play them out with Avacyn. Also very good on defense. If you're behind, Avacyn can buy you that turn you need and also kill one of their important threats.
Another copy of Gideon into play. I think Joao must have wondered what he did wrong today. We see another token made. We see a Needle Spires into play tapped and passes the turn back to Joao. Now, Joao, can you find another? If you can find another unlicensed integration, obviously puts him in a very nice spot. Can't tell what that card is exactly. Might be a Fatal Push that Joao has in hand, and he drew something else. We shall soon find out. Obviously, Fatal Push very good in these decks because it does a lot of damage. We see double Fatal Push. Wow. We're going to see Gideon falling down and 1 damage going through to Vincent. That was a timely draw, I would say, for Joao. But obviously, he's now got no cards in hand, and his opponent is about to untap with 5 lands and cards still in hand. No matter what they are, he's still got things to play with.
So unless Joao draws something extra, that Avacyn is going to be bad news for Joao.
Yeah, we see Chandra roll off the top just then as well. Not in a very good position. We're going to see, I think it's quite obvious for Joao what's happening on the other side. And we see a Gideon of his own though, which is very interesting. We see another Gideon. We might see everything attack, probably lose the Veteran Motorist in this trade. Here we go.
Yeah, I kind of like that Avacyn is a relevant card in the format again, because that is one of the most powerful cards in the previous standard formats. And we saw it be surprisingly obscure, I suppose, for the first few months of this one, but it's nice that that's back in play again, because you have these interesting situations where your opponent passes with 5 mana up, and do you want to call that bluff? I think Joao obviously has no choice here, obviously he's going to attack, but I love that Avacyn, with all the kind of lines of play that it opens up, is actually important again.
I'd like to thank Scryos for commentating that I've never been told I belong in the commentary booth, but you're right, I probably haven't, but then I've also been told I probably shouldn't belong on the tournament before playing Magic, so kind of stuck being in the commentary booth. Oh well, one of those things. Do my best. It wasn't good enough today, but thank you for the comment anyway. That's probably actually made my day, so thank you very much for that. And we see, as in play, we see Joao not playing anything at all. 6 lands in play, and he's starting to struggle. There are 7 rounds today.
Yeah, 7 rounds, and then the top 8 quarterfinal match.
Yeah, and we're about between 80 and 90 players. So what that means is that because we weren't above the 120, there is a quarterfinal, and whoever wins the quarterfinal gets their invite to Pro Tour. So you're going to have 4 people qualify, not the 8 for making the top 8. Unfortunately, the UK can't quite generate enough people to take it over the top to that 120. And we see a hand of, well, it's quite stacked. He's got Oath of Liliana, which may come down this turn. It's another way of removing things, and then has a Chandra to follow up again. Just makes good sense. Good game sense, and I think Vincent might very soon be wrapping this game up.
The sizing of the RPTQs here in the UK has always been a little bit awkward, so we've consistently had one of the largest RPTQs, which doesn't meet that threshold for the extra invite. So you look at some of the American ones in some of these faraway states, you have 20, 30, 40 people. These ones you can always expect to be 70 or 80 or thereabouts. It's always going to be 7 rounds.
Yeah, and we're going to see Chandra come down, plus make 2 red, tap a black mana, and Oath of Liliana into play, and Joao very quickly gets back his Scrap Heap Scrounger and is going to sacrifice the Scrap Heap Scrounger and then probably exile another creature to get it back again.
And this is the perfect example for why Oath of Liliana can be awkward, where your opponent just gets to bring back Scrounger for free, essentially, and sacrifice it to that. So we had, can't see, Lat might. So we had, I think it was 79 players, which haven't done the exact tiebreaker math, but I think that opens up room for maybe an X2 to sneak in.
Yeah. We were well out by then.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it puts it in a position. I think the problem Joao has right now is he has a Avacyn, which is unanswered and kills him in 2 turns. Well, 3 turns because he can block with the Thopter. I mean, Chandra could just down tick and kill the Thopter in my views. We see he's got Scrap Heap Scrounger and Gideon in hand. Whether you just unload them onto the table, but I mean, the only thing he could do is alpha attack through, but he's just put himself so far behind.
And we see a good point here from Celesticio in the chat. Seems like Chris may have forgot his zombie trigger from Oath of Liliana, which we think Oath of Liliana already an awkward card in this matchup. If you're going to forget the zombie trigger, it becomes even worse. And
because then the oaths very specifically say if a planeswalker entered the battlefield of this turn, it doesn't specify that it had to be in play already. It just says this turn, which means that you can still get a trigger, which is why the sideboard package of the oaths can be very powerful for the Mardu deck because it still gets it no matter what.
And the reason it's so nice is it creates a snowball effect where Oath of Liliana can take down a creature that would attack your planeswalker, and then also when you play the planeswalker, it gives you a blocker that can jump in front to defend it. So it defends it on 2 different axes.
Or we see the play where you play the Chandra, then make the oath, still got all the triggers from it as well. Obviously very strong. And we see Joao, his hand is not great. He needs to find that, and one of his copies of Unlicensed Disintegration now, or he needs to find his own copy of Avacyn.
We see Joao use Gideon to make an emblem here, which, you know, if the board was more even, we might see Joao just kind of want that Gideon to stick around. In this situation, though, it makes a lot of sense to get that Scrounger up to 4 power, for instance, so that Avacyn can't block it effectively.
It's also very interesting. At the moment, Joao puts him in a position where he dies coming back across the board because of the Needle Spires. It's a very interesting position that
so given that Joao is willing to do that, then is that a clear sign of something like a Fatal Push?
But then Fatal Push doesn't do anything to Avacyn either.
Well, now he's just tapped it, so he's dead on board.
Yeah. So if he now needs to hope that Chris doesn't see the play.
Right,
so
and sometimes that's all you can do.
Yeah, I think he's saying to
it's
Joao,
just pointing to
look,
it.
I've got this. I'm just going to fire up my Needle Spires.
So that mistrigger not going to matter, it looks like here.
Make 8 power, and we see a handshake.
And so
unfortunately, Joao falls 2-0.
Tough second loss for Joao, who I think would have been one of the favourites coming into this event, and if he had moved on to 4-1, certainly I think one of the favourites to secure the invite at the end.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, you can put it as what it is. Chris, yes, he drew a lot of copies of Unlicensed Disintegration. He drew a lot of removal, but like none of them really showcased the intricate strengths of Mardu vehicles. It was just banging into each other, and Chris had more gas when he needed it, and was able to finish the game off with a number of Unlicensed Disintegration, dealing probably in that game about 15 points of damage in that game, in those 2 games, and that's a lot.
Scryos makes a good point in the chat. Lat Might is what you would say if you were a Matt Light impersonator who was trying to pretend to be Matt Light when you weren't.
Well. So, unfortunately, Joao falls 2-0 to Chris. It's a shame. It was doing well. Obviously, Mardu vehicles coming to an end. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think anyone could, from that game, say that the Mardu vehicles deck was better or the Mardu Ballista deck was better. There's no sort of conclusion you can draw that would actually say that the one deck is better than the other. So
But in terms of specific cards, I think we can say that Avison looked very good whenever it turned up.
Oh yeah, I think Avison's very good. So welcome back to Commentary Roof again. My name's John Partridge, Tom Harvey beside me. That was a bit quick, I'm honest. Not quite what I was expecting, because what I'd heard from around the floor, people playing the Mardu mirrors, is that the game takes a long time, and the mirrors can just grind and grind and grind. As you say, the pre-board games are just basically banging into each other with aggressive creatures, seeing who comes out on top and who can land their Gideon and have it survive. But the post-board, there's a lot of intricacies to it that you don't quite see, but Chris, despite not necessarily having the most number of cards, or cards that might not necessarily be good, still came out on top and was able to take on to 4-1, Joao dropping to 3-2, and we'll have to see why the tiebreakers lie with who can actually make top 8. So I mean, at the moment we've only got 4 players on. We're going into this round. We're at EXO.
Yeah,
and there have been a few draws as well.
We have a few questions in the chat about who exactly is doing well. So Rob Catton coming to this round, 4-0. Raul Zimmerman, Charles Elliott Tamby, Joao, who we just saw lose on camera there, he was 3-1. Niels Moller playing against Joseph Freed on table 7, both of them on 9 points as well. Steve Baines, Ben Jones.
Quite a lot of 9 points still left in the tournament at the moment. It's interesting, there are a lot. And I think one of the big things taking into account is that there are a number of different decks at the top of the table. On the top there's 4-color Sahili Rai doing reasonably well.
Well, so
when you say
in the first round, when you say there's a lot of different decks, I think you're being a little bit generous. So we have lots of different slight variations on the same archetypes.
Well, I mean, you've got 4-color Sahili Rai doing well. You'll obviously have green blacks apparently going around the top tables, despite people's opinion that the deck is not good right now, purely because of the way Mardu vehicles sideboards. And also, if you ask any 4-color Sahili Rai player, it's a buy for them to play against green black. Whether that's true or not, we're not sure. But there are a number of different plays. I've seen there's a Jeskai control deck at the top tables at the moment. You've got it's littered with Mardu vehicles, but that's what you expect. The deck is incredibly strong.
Yeah,
right
so
now.
You hear that criticism of the format, that it doesn't seem that diverse. You have the same 3 decks doing well. Within those archetypes, though, you have a lot of room for customization. So we saw the Mardu Vehicles decks, 2 very different takes on that archetype in the feature match area there. And then for Black-Green, for instance, you have Black-Green Energy, Black-Green Delirium. There are 5 or 6 different 2-drops alone that you can play.
Yeah.
So lots of choices. And it wouldn't surprise me if there is a configuration of Black-Green that can be retooled to fight against these Mardu decks and these Sahili decks. And then, of course, with the Sahili decks, you can just play whatever you want, basically.
Yeah.
I was looking through some of the Magic Online League results before this event, and people were just going completely wild. You had Ishkana, Sky Sovereign, someone had a Sorin Grim Nemesis off only Aether Hub and Oath of Nissa, so you can just do whatever you want. I mean, it's a wild west out there.
But I think the thing to bear in mind is, if you're going to take green-black to a tournament, and this is obviously we're going to focus on green-black right now, bear in mind that the Mardu decks now almost have an exclusive sideboard to beat you. The 3 Oath of Liliana, the 3 Oath of Nissa, the 5 extra Planeswalkers. It's 10 cards already. And, I mean, if you're on the play and you go 2-drop, 3-drop, and they go Oath, and then they go Gideon and make a...
So if you're choosing to bring green back to a tournament, you need to make sure you're good against both their very aggressive main deck configuration and then also this mid-rangey sideboard plan. So you're essentially preparing for 2 different matchups there. And the reason the Oath plan is so good is that the green-black deck functions by just playing one really big creature every turn and trying to beat you down with it. And if you can pick those off and then play a Planeswalker and get 2 effects on top of that in the same turn,
and it does so much. And Gideon then becomes a real problem because it makes an additional 2/2, deals you 2 damage, and that damage does start to add up, especially when you put in that you still have Unlicensed Disintegration in the deck. And something that people forget, yes, you have less artifacts. You sometimes board out your Heart of Kyrans, but you still have your Thraben Inspector. It still makes an artifact, and that can still hurt. And a lot of people forget that it's an artifact, that clue as well.
Yeah, I think Thraben Inspector, quietly one of the most important cards in the vehicles deck, just having that incidental artifact, another 1-drop. Back when Smuggler's Copter was around, it was very good at
the Smuggler's Copter.
If you imagine what the format would be like if Mardu had Smuggler's Copter and Heart of Kiran,
I'd rather not. Let's move swiftly on from that one.
But yeah, so I think the theory a few months ago was that you had this 3-deck format in this rock, paper, scissors setup where black-green would beat Mardu, Mardu would beat the Sahili decks, and then Sahili decks would beat black-green. And what we've seen now is the Mardu decks have evolved to beat black-green as well, so they don't really have a natural predator anymore. And now for black-green, if you're losing to Sahili and then also struggling against Mardu, what are you really hoping to play against at that point?
There isn't really anything left in the
You can
format.
play against the other black-green decks and hope to win that way, I suppose.
Right, what we're going to do, we're going to put it onto the lovely blank screen. We're going to go see if we can get another match and see if we can get someone else into feature area for maybe game 3. Otherwise, that concludes our round 5. Sorry, it was a bit quick. You may or may not see me and Dom back in here today. I want to come back in again. I don't want to stand out there. I'd rather be commentating. But we'll see. We'll have a discussion or argument, probably more likely with Roy and Shay as to who does what, and hopefully we'll see you back for round 6 very soon. Thank you very much for watching.
Yeah, I've enjoyed this a lot, and if you have any feedback for me, then by all means contact me through whatever channel and let me know.
We'll see. It's been a pleasure again. Thank you very much for watching. We will see you for round 6 very shortly. On behalf of myself, Dom Harvey, thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again soon.